So we're going to get started with just a bird's eye view of everything in Final Cut Pro 10. So I won't dive super deep into any of the buttons yet. I just want to give you kind of like the most introductory view of what you're seeing in Final Cut when you open it up. So when you open up Final Cut Pro 10, if this is the first time you're opening it up, you won't see really much of any of this content on the screen. A lot of it's just going to be blank. But I wanted to have a couple things up just so you can kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. So the screen is just broken up into a couple parts. If you look over here on the right, this is your viewer. So your viewer shows you anything that your mouse is currently on top of. So as I kind of take my arrow and I just move it around the screen, you're going to see that viewer is going to change. So if I move it over here, we're going to see that. If I slide it over here, you're going to see that. So whatever your arrow is currently on, that's what you're going to see in the viewer. So that's your main screen. If you look down here on the bottom, this is called the timeline. So the timeline is where you piece all of your clips together. This is where you're going to be doing a lot of your work. You're just stitching all the clips. So the timeline will start on the left here. So that's where your first clip is going to go. And the timeline will end all the way on the right where your last clip is. And you're going to see a lot of things on the timeline. You'll see timestamps here. So this is 0 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and so on and so forth. And then as you move your arrow along the screen, you're going to see underneath the viewer, right over here, underneath the viewer, that's how many seconds into the timeline you currently are. So I'm now looking at 24 seconds. And then the number that's changing to the right of that, that's going to be my frames. So this was shot at 24 frames per second. So you're going to see 23 seconds and 14 frames, 23 seconds and 15 frames. And once it hits the 24th, it will drop to 24 seconds. So just to give you a general idea of kind of what's going on there. And in the timeline, you're going to have video clips, you're going to have audio clips in there, you might have titles in there and transitions. So that's kind of where you're going to go and craft all of that stuff. On the top left of the screen over here, that's going to be split into two parts. You have a library browser here on the left column, and then you have your event browser here on the right. So the library browser on the left is kind of like your file organization structure. So you're going to have things in there called libraries and events, some folders potentially. So that's going to be kind of like your organization bar, kind of like Finder on the computer if you're used to using a Mac. And whatever you select in that library bar will show up in the event browser on the right. So if I click on Main Street Donuts on the right in the event browser, that's what I'm going to see. And in the event browser, you're going to see projects. So those are actual, things you're working on. Those are timelines you're working on. So anything that's considered a project will be down here. So for example, the name of this project that I'm working on down here in the timeline is called Astronaut Scene. If I go to where it says change over here, I will see Astronaut Scene right here. So a list of all the projects, everything that you're working on will show up first. And then you're going to see all of the content that you're using to make your video below that. So you're going to see like audio tracks here. You're going to see a bunch of video clips here. So the event browser is where you're going to be able to pull in clips that you've brought in from memory cards or external hard drives or different forms of media. Cool. So in the library bar here, you're also going to see two buttons up on the top here. This is where you can bring in photos from your photo library. You can bring in music from your iTunes library. If you have any videos saved to your Apple TV app, you can bring that in as well. You have a sound effects library that comes with Final Cut Pro for free. So there's a whole bunch of sound effects in there. You also have this button up here for titles and generators. So titles are going to be just that. They're titles that you're bringing into your project. And you can put titles on top of clips. You can have titles by themselves alone in the timeline. And of course, there's a bunch of different types of titles. You can just do simple basic ones. You can make it look like Star Wars. You could do clouds. There's a whole bunch of fancy stuff too. And you can download more too. There's a lot of third-party websites where you can download more of these titles. Generators are going to be straightforward things like either blank colored backgrounds. So if you have like a green screen and you want to maybe change the background of what's going on behind a person, you can do that. You've got animated stuff like clouds. You can even have placeholders in here. So if you're putting together a timeline, but maybe all of the shots haven't been shot yet, or all the clips haven't been shot yet, you can put placeholders in so you can kind of time out. If there needs to be like a 35-second clip, you know, at the beginning of your project, you can put that in as a placeholder and then replace it later on with the 35-second clip. So there's a lot of cool stuff in here. All right, I'll leave it at that for now. So as we go through the next couple of videos, I'll dive more into each one of those and go through all the little buttons. And then of course I'm going to take you through like, what does it look like to import and how do you import content and where do you get content from? So we'll dive into all of that as well. But this hopefully at least will give you a general understanding of where you're at and what you're seeing when you open up the program. Again, if you have any questions or anything you want me to dive more into related to what you're seeing here, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Subscribing is going to be big because we have a lot of stuff coming up. Not only are you going to learn Final Cut Pro 10, but you're going to learn a lot of editing techniques as well. So a lot of new content coming. So make sure to do that, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.